Business ownership has never been hotter, but how do you do it? That's where I come in. Allow me to guide you on your journey. Welcome to Ion Franchise. This episode sponsored by SEO Samba. Empower your franchise with predictable results and AI-driven marketing. Up next,
we bought franchises because we know the power of the support and everything that comes along with being in a franchise system. We kind of jumped the line effectively, right?
So let's drill down a little further on the skill set here. But don't forget, there's a doctor dedicated to growth.
Dr. Grow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising, and I'm your host, Lance Graulich. We talk often about the riches are in the niches. We know the riches are in the niches. Well, here's a niche that me, coming from the restaurant business a million years ago and owning restaurant franchises, I never really understood how many brands there are out there. You can make a lot of money. You can make a living, low-cost investments, easy. But it's a niche that your initial reaction might be, huh? People do that? That's a franchise? There's no French fries involved. Can you imagine? So today, I'm going to welcome to the show Jef Flournoy, and I'm also going to welcome to the show Jason Henshaw. Jef is the brand president for Mosquito Squad, and Jason is the franchise development manager. Welcome, gentlemen.
Lance, great to be here. Appreciate you having us on the show.
It is fabulous to have you guys, such an esteemed panel today. So I just have to throw this out there. When you guys got into the mosquito business with Mosquito Squad, what was that? What was the reaction? Because doesn't everybody tend to think of things like McDonald's when you think of franchising?
I think so. I mean, I think initially people that I tell my friends a lot, hey, I'm in Mosquito. And they said, when did you do that? How in the world did you think of that? And I have to back up and talk about, the unique ways that franchise kind of pulls us in to different things we never, ever envisioned doing. I started in pools. And so people used to always give me a hard time. You're a pool boy. And now I'm a mosquito boy. And so, I think, Lance, ultimately, you never know in your entrepreneurial life and spirit where you're going to end up. But today I'm a mosquito boy.
Yeah, I love it. So let's dive into who currently today owns a Mosquito Squad. So here's the question. If you're going to think of your top 10 most successful franchisees, some of which maybe their lives have been changed by becoming franchisees of this business, what did they do before joining Mosquito Squad?
Yeah, I love it. It's a wide-ranging answer, but one of the things I'm most proud about is we've got multiple female owners that have, won franchise of the year that have come into this business. A lot of the common themes are that they were entrepreneurs before, whether it was with their family or a much smaller business. And then we have a good section of people, military folks, military background. We've got and then if we think about it and we look at our top of the top group that I really call sort of our best owners, some of those folks, they were in technology, believe it or not, but they also conversely were in outdoors. So a lot of folks really love to be outdoors. So if you think of businesses that get you outdoors, that's really where our folks started. And it's been interesting because now that we've been doing this, we're about to have our 20th anniversary. It's our 20th birthday coming up in 2025. And to see all kinds of different people coming from all different backgrounds is pretty amazing.
And how many franchise owners do you have? And I'm assuming the average person owns more than one territory?
That's exactly right. So most franchise owner averages about 2.5 territories, as we call them here. And we have about 180 owners that operate in about 272 different territories or locations throughout the country.
That's amazing. And as far as how many millionaires have you created in the Mosquito Squad family? I'm sure we can't talk about that exactly today. But when people go through the process, let's talk about something. Jason, when people are starting in the process, a broker like me,
Yeah.
I refer somebody to Mosquito Squad. You start the process. Talk a little bit about those highlights, because everybody listening that's interested in a business, in a franchise, is listening for, why would I do this? Can I do this on my own? Why do I need a franchise? What kind of support? What kind of marketing? But talk about the process to get them through that.
Yeah, so great question. I'd like to unpack a little bit of what you said, right? So franchising in itself, right, I think is the greatest invention for small business creation that's ever been created, right? Because I'm proof, right? I've as well as Jeff, and I think you as well, Lance, we've bought franchises because we know the power of the support and everything that comes along with being in a franchise system. You kind of jump the line effectively, right? You're not making all those rookie mistakes that you would make if you were on your own. And as you said, niches are in the riches, or riches are in the niches. Because these are things that not necessarily people know how to do or want to do on their properties, and so we're there to provide that. So when someone comes to me, and again, to Jeff's point, all different varying backgrounds, right? Mosquitoes are not selective, right? They bite you whether or not you're a CEO or you're a school teacher, right? It doesn't matter. So people can get behind, can understand why they would want to do this. Now, there's something in franchising. We know that there's a lot of franchise models that are in pest control, whether it's mosquitoes specifically or various other types of critter control or whatever, right? And what I always like to point out when I'm talking to someone from the very first time, particularly if it's a broker candidate, is hey, what separates you from the pack, right? Lance presented critter control, and he presented you guys. What makes you guys unique? Why would we choose you guys? And so I always kind of point to a few main things. One is kind of burying the lead on this call. No royalties for 12 months. We're not charging one dime for the support that you're getting from our amazing support team. And I don't think that's just me saying it. I think Jeff believes the same thing, and I put our support team against anybody out there just because of the vast experience that we have. We've been around, as he said, almost 20 years now, right? So with that comes a lot of experience. Number two, territory size, gigantic, 500,000 people. That's like really huge. So with that becomes a lot of opportunities. So you mentioned kind of talking about performance millionaires. We can't say how many millionaires, but we can say how much money our average territory makes in our system. It's almost $500,000 per territory, and then our top 25% do over $1 million. So those are big numbers.
And Jason, let's throw it out there too. The margins have to be pretty darn high. We're not talking about hamburgers here.
Right, we're talking around the 25% range, right, in EBITDA, because there's not a lot of overhead, right? This is not a brick and mortar business. You start from your home. You're removing all those things from the P&L, like build out, construction, landlord, utilities, goes away, right?
Yep.
So you're saving dramatically, and essentially the model is one employee, one truck with some chemical and some sprayers, right? It's not a lot of overhead to what we do.
Mm-hmm. And talk about, is there an in-person discovery day as part of the process where you get to meet people face-to-face, and also talk about the validation process?
Yeah, completely virtual, our Meet Your Team Day or Discovery Day. The training is in person. It's kind of a hybrid. We have a virtual 2-week training prior to the in-person. We do that because, we want you to learn the basics before you take that deeper dive with us in person in Macon, Georgia. So it's when we get to validation, we validate really, really well. Our owners, love us, and that's just not me saying it. I was lucky enough. Jeff invited me to the owners conference earlier this year. We're coming up on the next one in February, and I think it was like 95% turnout of owners.
That's right.
That's phenomenal. I mean, if you've been franchising long enough, these things are not mandatory usually. They're optional to attend. And the fact that 95% of our owners came on their own dime, hotel, flight, etc. And I think roughly half of those brought their managers too and paid for them to come.
Well, Jason, let's kind of highlight that fact, because I'll tell you, I saw in a franchise-related Facebook group recently, someone that is a young franchisor was talking about the lack of participation from his people in general. And then another franchisor who's much larger, it's a brand I don't particularly care for, by the way, was like, I can't even get my people to participate in the annual convention. So
wow.
I want people to understand, when people ask me, Lance, how do you know a great brand? When I know this is the fact and you have the level of participation and that camaraderie, that community within your franchise owners, that's amazing. That's a telltale sign of success. So I really applaud you for that, and thank you for sharing that.
I appreciate that, Lance. And one thing I want to add to that, a little more color to it, we develop that culture. We encourage that culture because part of our support system is we tap our top performing franchisees and we ask them to come on board and become business advisors, because we think who better to give advice to our existing owners than the ones that have a track record of success. And so they're not getting advice and support from some lackey that we hired off the street that never owned a business before, doesn't know anything about pest control. These are their peers. These people are living and breathing this and doing this every single day. So I think that kind of encourages that kind of camaraderie, as you said, or interconnected networking and support within the system.
Yeah, that's great. Validation. How do you guys do validation? Because for my clientele, I explain to them how important validation is, because the franchise disclosure document is great. There's going to be a lot of relevant, important information for them to review in those 23 items. However, the franchisees that are out there doing it, there's a lot of valuable questions you can ask them. And for those listening that aren't aware of this, franchise owners are not bound by that disclosure document, and they can tell you whatever they choose to tell you pretty freely. So I tell my clientele, feel free to call as many franchisees as you need to. So do you provide a list of all the franchisees, or how do you do that process?
Yeah, so what I do is during our, by the time we get the validation, we start to get to know each other, get to know the candidate, and I kind of get a gauge for what type of ownership they're wanting to achieve, right? Semi-absentee, owner-operator, what area of the country they're looking to open up the business. All those things matter. So I utilize that information to try to connect them with owners that kind of fit what they're looking to do. So I want it to be, aspirational. Talk to people that are doing what you're doing now, that what you want to do, they're doing it now. I also try to connect them with someone that's maybe a newbie, so they get the variety of someone that's been doing this for a while,
yes,
in the category that they're looking to do it, but also someone maybe that's not in the same category, but also that is 1 year in, year one,
yeah,
and going through those hardships of any new business, of kind of getting your return on investment, etc. So that's what I try to do. Yes, to your point, they can call anybody they want in the back of the FTD, and I encourage them to do that as well. But I find that most of my candidates like me assisting and setting up those calls. They're one-on-one. I'm not there. They're not group validations. I always say, listen, get the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want you coming into this eyes wide open. All right? I want you to ask them if they love us, if they hate us, has the support been great, has it been horrible? Would they do it again? Mistakes they made in year one. It's not common when you meet someone for the first time to ask them how much money they make, but I want you to ask them how much money they make, right? Because you need to know, right? So, and I always like to say, my saying is, they call it validation for a reason, because it's, hey, Jason, I trust what you're saying, but I'm going to verify that, right? Trust but verify. So they're validating everything they've seen in the FTD and our conversations thus far.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tell everybody, your goal is not to have any surprises when you join a franchise.
That's right.
Take your time, check off all the boxes. If you're not sure what to add to your checklist, that's why you use a consultant like myself. So Jeff, as the brand president, you have a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of conversation out there about responsible franchising, and there's quite a few franchises. Like I suggested earlier, without naming names, I'm never going to show my candidates, because I don't think either the leadership is that great or they even care about their franchise owners. So overall support, and really great marketing are two of the biggest things that most people are super concerned about. So, as the president, how do you make sure you stay on course for that? And what are those mechanisms in place to make sure that, they're getting an ROI on their marketing and they feel like they're getting a conversation with somebody from corporate every once in a while to make sure they're staying on track?
Sure. I think it is really the critical question in franchising, because to your point, there are a lot of franchisors out there that don't do it. Couple of things that I will tell you about our organization. Number one, I was a franchise owner, and I think that's important, because once you get to my position, I still remember the lessons that I learned. I remember the things that I wish this franchisor had done. And I think that really helped shape my leadership and my team that I've really, put together. I tell people all the time, it starts with Jason. He is starting to educate our candidates immediately. People are coming to him and they don't know anything about franchising. And so when we think about support, to me, it immediately starts with Jason. And then once we come on board, everybody says, oh, we've got an onboarding team. And yes, we have an onboarding team, but I think what really distinguishes us is if we've hired a couple of new folks here in the last 2 years that put us at a totally different level. One is a vice president of strategic growth, Dr. Kurt Van Dock, who has revolutionized. What's that?
A doctor.
A doctor. That's exactly right. From Ohio State, a doctor. And he's a Buckeyes fan. I won't hold that against him. I'm a Bulldog, and we go back and forth occasionally over the years.
Big Blue.
Oh no. But I think we have what he has done is taken us, and put that support where we need to be. And what I mean by that is, we were doing mosquitoes, and now we're transitioning into doing a little bit more and allowing those owners to have more and have more revenue streams. And the other thing, Jason mentioned it earlier, I just hired a vice president of operations. He's a 2-time franchise of the year, and he's been on board with me, Lance, for a year. And the difference that it makes to have someone that's an owner that was the FAC chair for 4 years.
Franchise Advisory Council for those playing on the bingo board at home.
Yeah, I'm going to drop a couple more, and I'll see if you get them. But well done. We're guilty of that in franchising. FTD. All kinds of different things we like to drop. But yeah, Greg Atwell has been amazing. And then we've got a marketing team. I know you mentioned marketing. We just hired a new chief marketing officer at Authority Brands. He's brought in an incredible new energy and vision. So I agree. I think those are the two questions. So I typically will do a president's call with every candidate that comes through. I want to make sure, it's almost like another validation call, right? Jason's told them something. They want to call and have a conversation. A lot of the questions, Jason's not on the call. It's a lot of questions.
Is what he said true, Jeff?
That's right. Exactly right, Lance. And so I love it because I get a chance to answer whatever. I tell them no questions off limits. Ask whatever you want. Sometimes they last, probably like your podcast. Sometimes they're a little shorter. And sometimes they go over, and it's okay. Either way is totally fine. I tell them, hey, reach out to me anytime. But to me, marketing and support are the two things that really make an organization go. A lot of people, I'll be honest, franchising is, as I've seen it over the years, I'm sure like you, has gotten better and better. But you better step your game up, because that's the competition that's out there. It's what makes franchising such an incredible model, as Jason mentioned earlier, but I would put our support team up against anyone.
So let's talk about seasonality. I know some people listening to this are thinking, mosquitoes? I'm in Ohio. I only deal with mosquitoes X amount of time throughout the year. So I happen to know some, truthisms, if that's a word, to that, but I want to hear it from you guys.
Yeah, so go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely. So I would tell you a couple things. Number one of the biggest things on why people got into this business is the seasonality. So one of the greatest things about Mosquito Squad and this industry is that, yes, a lot of our folks do work from beginning of March. I say out and treating. So obviously there's pre-work, right? We're in budgetary season in February, but they are working truly out, their organization is running for, anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And you're going to say, well, Jeff, that's my question. There's six months there you're unaccounted for, maybe 3. That's why they got into it, Lance. I mean,
Yes.
these people are doing well enough, and those 6 to 9 months where they can. I've got a great franchise owner up in the Northeast. I jokingly say that I don't try to get in touch with him for 2 months because he's skiing. He does it every year. In fact, I just emailed with him, and he said, yes, I'm out in Utah skiing. I'm going to Colorado. I'll be back in mid-January. But I would add one more thing, and I know we'll get into this later, but we're expanding our services. So some of our locations, and a lot of our locations, are seeing that season extend on both ends. We love it. Our folks love it, and they look at it as a huge plus.
Yeah, and I'm smiling because I know the truth, because I've heard from some of your franchisees how where maybe some people in the discovery process might come up with this negative, as people often do. Oh, well, I don't have 12 full months of business. A lot of people don't want that. They're happy with the predictability. Again, the no surprises, to know if you're in the Northeast, certain months you get to take off and go enjoy yourself and still have a nice profitable year regardless, right?
That's right.
There's no question. I mean, the Northeast and Midwest are 2 of our best regions that we have out there. And again, you asked earlier about, hey, your friends told you got in the mosquito business. It is a total misconception when I tell my friends or anybody about, we're got these big locations up in the Northeast. I mean, you can just see their jaw hit the ground. And I'm like, yes, we have big locations up there. So it is amazing. I mean, Sunbelt's good too, but it is, the other state that I'll mention that people are surprised by is California. California probably over the last 5 years has been our fastest growing state, without question. Jason's done an incredible job of finding very qualified candidates to launch in California. And again, another state that people say, there's no mosquitoes in California, but we have sure found out, and I'm sure Jason would want to add to that. It has been an incredible state for our company.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, Jason, and also if you guys want to jump into the other services that you guys are doing, because again, I would imagine with your new, Dr. Growth, if you will, is that who it is?
Yeah, there you go. I might start calling him. I like that, Lance.
Dr. Growth, you're always, and this is what I tell people all the time, when you get into the right franchise, there are other people up at night figuring out ways to grow your business. You're not doing that all by yourself.
That's right. And so, just the, a couple of things. California, fastest growing market because, you're there, Lance. I mean, it's, I think, and it's hard for me to fathom because I'm in South Florida, that there was a time when there was no mosquitoes in California. Not in a not too distant past, right? Like the last 10 years, this has been a relatively new phenomenon. So, obviously people don't like mosquitoes, not used to them there in California. So they want to get rid of them, right? But I always like to say Mosquito Squad is a little bit of a misnomer for us now because when we started 20 years ago, that's what created this brand. We were first to market. Not to mention the other names, we're not going to do that. But they're duplicators, right? They've copied our model and are replicating it.
It's the most sincere form of flattery, guys.
That's right. And
no question.
It's like they say, adapt or die, right? You have to evolve. And so over the years we've adapted, and whereas today we've put out just recently this year our pest packages, which is essentially full service pest control, right? We handle pests that go into the home, pests that are in your yard as well. And so, while it doesn't completely eliminate the seasonality aspect of the mosquito, it like Jeff said, it extends our seasons. And some of our owners are like, heck yeah, more lines of revenue, let's go ahead and do that. Some of our owners, believe it or not, are like, hey, I still want to go skiing, right? I know I could add these additional lines of revenue, but I still want to go skiing. So to each their own, right? It's part of being in business ownership, right? You make decisions for your business based on your need. I think that's a huge differentiator for us compared to other mosquito focused pest control companies.
So,
Yeah.
Jason,
And one
what's
thing
the
I want
tip?
to add.
Oh,
Sorry,
go
Lance.
ahead,
One thing I
Jeff,
want
and
to
then
add
we'll
to
dive
that,
into what the typical investment is. We'll let Jason handle that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay.
You had a
Jeff,
question.
you're up,
Oh,
Jeff.
sorry. Yep. So one thing you mentioned is that thinking about with I love it now. We're going to go with Dr. Grow. I think that's great. But one thing I tell candidates all the time is I tell them, because most of them are looking at least initially right at a couple of concepts. And so I tell them though, I say you need to think about this. You're going to sign probably a 10-year agreement with most franchisors. Is that franchisor, what are they going to be doing in 3 or 5 years? What is this brand going to look like? Are they thinking 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead? Are they just sitting back saying, you know what, we're good, we're doing the same thing? And so that's now with these pest packs that Jason mentioned and Dr. Grow and this team we're building, I like to point that out to all of the candidates that call us to say, look, I want to show you exactly what we have done over the last 3 to 4 years to evolutionize this brand, to make sure that you know that we always are looking out for you and we always are trying to make sure that we're putting you in the best position to succeed. And I think that's important. And I don't think candidates necessarily look too deep into that enough. And I think they're starting to, but I think it's really a point that I know Jason talks about and I know that I talk about with all the candidates.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's great. So, Jason, investment-wise, what is it, if somebody's buying 2 territories, what is that typical investment?
Yeah, so for a single territory, the franchise fee is $50K for a single. Additional territories are the same, $50K. So $100K in franchise fees. We put in working capital, a year's worth of working capital into our investment, which is very unique. Most franchisors put in like 3 months. So it's roughly half the investment. The total all in is about 170 to 220.
Yeah.
So say 200 round number.
Get your SBA loan, put down your 40 grand, you're in business.
That's it. And so, and yeah, is add as many territories as they like. I think we cap it at 3 because we think starting with any more than that is kind of too much for a new owner to come in at. But they can add over time, and we give territory discounts for existing owners as well.
Gentlemen, I wanted to ask, there's a big question, it seems, and discussion online all the time in franchising. Can somebody be a semi-absentee or essentially a part-time owner? In other words, can they keep their job and hire somebody to help them run the business?
I'll let you take that, Jeff.
Yeah.
With our existing.
Yeah. So, for me personally, I think you can. I think you've got to be very careful, though. It is something out there. I know it's in franchising. Most people, if I always think about it this way. If I was really going to start a business and it wasn't a franchise, would I do it? Would I run it that way? And the typical answer is no. Now, franchising gives you a lot of advantages, right? Jason mentioned it. There's a lot of stumbling blocks, especially from an organization that's been doing it for 20 years. I just tell people, if you're going to set that up, you're going to need a little bit more capital, and you really need to find that right person. I always like it when they find someone that they've known in the past, that they have a relationship with, it's not a brand new person. We certainly see that, and we've seen it be successful. But I think it works in the right spots. Certainly what I see now, we just started a manager training program that we are grouping together some managers, because a lot of our big organizations, the owners, we talked about working 6 months. They're there 6 months, but these managers are truly running their organizations now, and their hours that they're working are far less. So we see it a little bit on the front end, but what we really see with our organization is really on that sort of, year 4, year 5, as they start really growing. And we've noticed that we've taken that leadership position of saying, okay, how do we get these managers and really treat them almost like owners? It hit me probably 12 months ago that I've got probably 7 owners that I entered into this sort of leadership organization that I started, that I run, and they totaled 59 years of experience within Mosquito Squad. An amazing collection of people, and I just felt like, we're not tapping into them enough. So now, we're going, Jason mentioned, we're going to Dallas for our convention. They'll have a leadership role in there. We do manager training twice a year. They'll have a leadership role in that as well, because they're almost just like owners. They're extremely bright, and they're sort of the future of Mosquito Squad.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Jason, you had something to add?
Yeah, I did. So, as Jef said, coming in as semi-absentee or the GM model, that's what that's what it is, right? You're hiring a manager to do the things you would do as an owner. It's blaringly obvious that it's going to cost you more, right? You're paying someone a salary that normally would go to your bottom line. So, as he said, just come prepared for that. I mean, it's again, blaringly obvious, but I was like, I just, even though I think it's obvious, I say it on the call with him, like, hey, you're going to do this, just come to the table with a little more cash. And one thing I want to point out, Jef kind of touched on this a little bit, that I thought was amazing when it comes to managers. When I went to that owners conference, and I'm sure they're going to do the same thing this year, there was I forget her name, forgive me, she was presenting, and she was doing great presentation about, I forget the topic, it was about some particular product. And I was like, Jef, who? She's on the ops team? Who is that? He goes, no, that's one of the managers for one of the franchisees. I was like, that's huge. A manager for a franchisee presenting a slide deck at our conference. I mean, that's huge. It blew my mind.
No, that actually, I mean, that's amazing, because that's what we want. We want our team to grow into that leadership, so we don't have to be there doing it.
Right.
That's how Chuck in the truck is no longer in the truck.
That's right.
No question about it. I mean, that you're preaching to the choir with probably 50% of our locations, Lance.
Yeah. So what's next? What are the hot areas that you're really not in yet, and you're surprised, and you need, you want to grow there?
Florida.
Really?
Florida, we have some really key markets open. We're making a move on Orlando. We've pretty much snagged up all of Tampa, but yeah, Dade County, Broward County, pretty wide open.
Dade and Broward. All right, good to know. Yep. I have plenty of friends and family there.
Perfect.
Good.
And that's where I am. I'm in Hollywood, in Broward County. What else did you say, Jef? Maybe Texas, some key markets in Texas.
Yeah, and I always go back to California. It's starting to fill up. Again, Jason's done an outstanding job out there, but, based on the success that we're seeing, especially early on, California is just a market that, I wouldn't be surprised in 2 to 3 years is 75% filled up.
Yeah.
So let's drill down a little further on the skill set here. If you're going to think again of those top owners, what really are they doing and have they done to launch their business so effectively? Are they doing the sales, or are they just hiring great people? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would tell you, so we study this a lot because, we're obviously trying to replicate that. I think initially the folks that come in, they follow the system, right? It's so many people buy into a franchise organization. Jason and I talk to them and they go, yes, we're going to answer the phone, and yes, we're going to do this. And, they check all the boxes. But then I love sports, right? You go Blue, Buckeyes, I'm a Bulldog, wherever, you kind of land. But to me, I think about when the lights turn on, right, when the business starts, what is this person doing to really be successful? And the number one thing is they've got to follow the system. They've got to be organized. And look, small business ownership, especially in the beginning, is hard. I think people have sort of this misconception that we're going to walk in and it's just, we're going to be a walk in the park. So they have a great work ethic. But I think one of the things that I think that our owners really, do well is that they're organized, and they also are a collaborative group, meaning that they'll have, they'll talk to business advisors, and we're telling them this, and they're listening, and they're saying, hey, well, we were out here today, and we noticed this or that, and that's how I think we've gotten great over these 20 years. Is that I tell people all the time, we're not just sitting here with me and my leadership team coming up with the best ideas. That's not how a great organization functions. We talked about it earlier. We've got 175 plus owners that are extremely bright people. We would be fools not to listen to them about, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Sometimes it's a bit much, right, Lance? I mean, but at the same time, these are bright people, and we've got a great organization. And again, some of those best ideas come from those folks. So those are really the combinations that I think that as I look at our top 20 locations, those would be a common thread of characteristics.
It is pretty amazing when people consider a franchise and they think in terms of the training and the support and the follow-up and the best practices and what have you, but they do forget at times about this collaboration. You're joining really like this giant mastermind with Dr. Growth, heading this up now. And it's people don't think of that because a lot of people listening at some point or another think to themselves, can I do this on my own? Right. Why do I need them?
Right. Well, one of the things, it's a quick answer to that. If you were running a business and you looked and you drove 2 blocks over and it was a competitor, could you sit down and pull out your P&L and your competitor would pull out your P&L, and would you be willing to go line by line and then talk about your strategies for the next 1 to 5 years? Yep. And I think universally the answer is absolutely not. At least good competitors, that is. Yep. But in franchising, that's what makes it special. We know that, but I think sometimes, Lance, you've been in it a while. Jason, you've been in it, but that's the bubble we live. We know that happens. So we have regional roundtables. We get together at a convention together. I mean, we have Facebook groups. I mean, one of the things I was most proud of, we did a franchise business review, and the highest score we got was about our community of owners and how they shared great ideas and practices. And I think that's what's made us great. And so that's the difference. That's why you buy into a franchise. Everybody knows about the systems, but I think it's the people that are in the system and them willing to sit down, whether you've been in the business for 2 days or you've been in the business 10 years. Anybody's willing to sit down with you and have a conversation.
From a simplistic standpoint, I tell people, look, if you're going to compete against a franchise in any industry, I'll give you an example. One of your sister brands, 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning. I had someone that came to me and said, my dad started his own air conditioning company. He didn't want to do a franchise. He didn't know anything about air conditioning. It's taken him 8 years. 8 years to get up to about 800,000. I think he said 840 in revenue. And his father was really proud. He's making some good money. He said, why would I need a franchise? And I'm on a Zoom call with them because the son really wanted me to talk to dad. And I said, why would you need a franchise? Because I happen to know in that franchise, you would have done those sales in year 1. If you followed the system, you might have even done more. And he looked at me, just stared at me. So what I tell people simply, if you're doing it on your own, you're probably never going to achieve the sales as what your competitive franchise is doing. And paying that little royalty and a franchise fee is nothing for what you're going to get long term. And the lack of headaches as well.
That's right.
Fair assessment?
Yeah, agreed. And one thing that you kind of touched on briefly, Jeff, you kind of went over it quickly, but I think it's important to kind of dig it out a little bit. So there's this organization called Franchise Business Review, or FBR. They're an independent organization, kind of a watchdog group. They do independent surveys to your franchisees. Franchisor is not included. They're anonymous, right? They can say whatever they want. And so, I always like to say, as sexy as this job is in sales, it's high paced, right? Brokering is high pace, high risk, high reward. But it's not me that sells franchises. It's guys like Jeff. It's the operations side. That's what sells a franchise. That's what they're buying. They're not buying me, right? They're talking with me for a few weeks, or same with you, Lance. Coming to you for a few weeks or a few months, but eventually they're going to end up onboarding with that operations team, and that has to be buttoned up. And so the fact that We talked about already the attendance at the owners conference, the fact that managers are being active in the system, the FAC involvement. I always like to mention the Egg McMuffin, right? That wouldn't even exist without franchisees. Or if you love an Egg McMuffin, that's a franchisee invention, right? So we have to rely on our franchisees because they weren't created in a vacuum, right? They had lives before they came here in sales or in marketing or in business or banking or whatever, and they could bring all that to the table. That's going to benefit us as a whole. And so, operations sells franchises, and so FBR, who did those independent surveys of our franchisees, I think we won a couple years in a row the award from FBR. So that's most awesome. Highest ranked in our category by FBR.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So guys, share a little bit about how you got into franchising and why you love it so much. Jason, you first.
Me first? Okay. So my story's pretty quick, and I always like to say, folks usually fall into franchising. You didn't just wake up one day and say, I want to be in franchising, right? That's not how it works. So I was working for someone else. I had a friend that started a franchise, became a franchisor. I was franchisee number 6. They were sending candidates to me for validation, and I was closing them. They were going back and signing after they talked to me because I was doing well. I mean, I was just sharing exactly what was happening. Yeah. They brought me on board. Long story short, we grew from 6 franchisees to 150 in about 5 years. Got attention by private equity. We bought our competitor, worked with them for most of my franchise career, then worked for a lot of other brands. Most of my work has been in brick and mortar, high-end retail, but joined Authority Brands about 2 years ago in the home service sector, and I think this is probably the best position I've ever been in because prior to getting into franchising, I was in the home service business as well. So I've kind of found my niche combining the two.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. Jeff?
Yeah, for me, it was I was in private banking and felt the glory of banking back in a while ago, about 20 years ago.
Another banker getting into franchising.
Yeah, and a direct path, right? And so it was just not what I thought it was going to be. My wife came home one day and said she wanted to go to dental school. And when I got my jaw up off the ground and said, well, that's fantastic, so we're moving, I decided, you know what, I need to look at a career change. And I had a really good friend that had started a franchise. Ironically, I was the 5th person to buy into America's Swimming Pool Company. And we moved up into Augusta. And I ran that business for about 9 years. And when my wife finished her pediatric dental residency, I sold my business. But the first call I made was back to Stuart Vernon and Tom Swift and said, guys, I love the vision. I love franchising. Can I come work for you on the corporate side? And they said, absolutely. So in 2015, I joined their team on the franchisor side and been there ever since and loved it.
That's awesome. Well, I should also mention, Mosquito Squad is owned, the parent company is Authority Brands. It was mentioned a couple of times. Great parent company, great group of people, a ton of experience, a lot of great brands. So should give them some credit. So guys, final thoughts, final words of wisdom for the audience. Jason, you have the floor first.
Yeah, I would just say, like I mentioned previously, there's a lot of competitors in the space out there, and weigh your options. Look at the differences, and to me, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm biased, but first to the space, that's huge. Size of territory, huge. No royalties, huge. Put a full year's worth of working capital, gigantic, right? We want you to be successful. At the end of the day, that's what all these things are set towards that goal. We put our money where our mouth is, right? We're not making anything off you in year one because we want that to go to your pocket, right? So I think those are big differentiators that really speak to the culture of the brand.
Love it. Don't forget, there's a doctor dedicated to growth.
Dr. Grow. Dr. Grow.
Yeah, no question. So, I got to mention Dr. Growth again. He's going to love to hear this. I think there's a couple quick things that I think, technology. We're a huge proponent of technology, right? If you're not using it, you're just slipping way behind. Data. I tell people at every Meet Your Team Day, at every President's Call, if you're making business decisions on your gut and your feel, you're going to go out of business. We make every single business decision based on data. I mean, we have probably 35 reports that you can get on every single day that are in real time that allow you to make decisions for your business. Do I need to hire someone? Do I need another truck? You know, what do I need to, where do I need to go market my business? What are the zip codes I've got more potential in? The people. We've talked about Dr. Growth. We've talked about Greg Atwell. We've talked about our franchise owners, lifestyle. We've talked about that, right? People love the lifestyle. We've talked about innovation. I think those are the big things. The one thing I'm proud about that's happened probably over the last 2 years is second generation owners. If you think about what is the biggest compliment you can really have in a brand, it's somebody bought it, they've run it, it's successful, and now all of a sudden they want to give it to their children. And we've got 4 owners that have now given it to their children, and it's just really fascinating to still be close with their parents and now watch their children go and run the business. So it's an incredible organization. I appreciate you mentioning Authority Brands. They've been outstanding over the last 6 years. Craig Donaldson has done just a phenomenal job. Tom Swift, Stuart Vernon. It's been a great group of people to work with.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. Good way to wrap. Gentlemen, you've been amazing guests, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks. It's been such a pleasure. And Lance, I love being on here, and continued success to you. I appreciate what you're doing. More people need to know about franchising, and excited to see your new show on YouTube.
You got it. Franchise Road Trip is live. Thanks, guys.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.